Well, there it is. That's my mug. How you guys doing today? Thank you all for spending time with me during your lunchtime. I know someone right now is probably enjoying a nice cousin sub or some sloshkis, washing it down with a nice sprecher. I miss those things. We don't have it here in DC. And Anthony, thank you for inviting me to present at your UG. I think that UGs are super important to the community. I say that was last year? Last year at Ignite, I was privileged to be a part of Satya's keynote. And the one thing that I said in my brief video was the fact of, I am community. I grew up, my career blossomed from community. So UGs are things that you really should be a part of. If you don't have one, feel free to link with Anthony or anyone else that's on the membership or on the team to help out. This is a UG is definitely a team sport. Can't do it by yourself. I've tried it and I failed. So yeah. But other than that, I am a power addict. It's my brain, baby. I've had put out there. It's been a grassroots movement, just kind of just blossomed, and just been. My idea was just to have a place where we all can talk and showcase our ideas for the Power Platform. And it has taken a life of its own. It's not even mine anymore. This idea does not belong to me. It belongs to the community. So
Yep.
on Twitter, if you have use the hashtag Power Addicts, you'll give someone to answer questions or just have great conversation about the Power Platform. I am the bow tie slayer. You may see my name. You may see my name on Twitter, the Dapper Apper. And actually Keith gave me that name, Keith Watley. And he said I'm the only guy that he's seen that wear bow ties consistently. And I will say I think I have more bow ties than I build apps. I'm sad to say. But yeah, they're on sale. I'm gonna buy it. And also, yeah, I am from Wisconsin. Milwaukee, Wisconsin is home. I spent almost all my years there. I've been only in the DC, Northern Virginia area for the last 10 years. I was kind of, I shouldn't say this out loud because it's like a four-letter word, but I was tired of the snow. So I ventured over here. My LinkedIn information is there. You find me on Twitter. I'm working on some other things, URL-ish for the net. But you will see a lot of my posts that I put out there on Twitter is kind of what Anthony said. It's there to show some changes that I've seen or some things that are that I've created and I wanted to share it, or the fact of just letting someone FYI to think about these things before you start to build your apps. And for today, that's kind of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about I'll be talking about 101 of sharing creating SharePoint and using it with the Power Platform. So this is definitely going to. I'm sharing my screen right now, I think.
Yeah, so we can definitely have you share. One thing I wanted to throw out there was with the Power Addict. If you can give a little plug to that, that was one thing I wanted to open up for you is just, how that. I mean, maybe just a little bit of history, what it is, just a tiny bit, and then what it is itself. What it is today, because I know how it started a little bit different than what it is today, and then also how people can connect with that, going forward.
Yeah, most definitely. So, Power Addicts, if you are at this meeting, you are a Power Addict. Power Addicts is just a really just encompassing group of people. If you work with the Power Platform, and we're not just agnostic to just say we're talking about Power Apps or Power Automate, but anything within the Power Platform, Power BI, virtual agents, they all belong to the platform. So if you're working with that technology, you are already a Power Addict, and there's no you got to go through anything to become part of the movement. What we do ask is the fact of you help someone else. Our motto is we rise together, and so we help each other and that's what we do. We are our community. You'll see a new slogan come out next week. I think it's when we're going to release it. But everyone's a power addict. There is no admission to get into the group or be a part of it, or you use a hashtag. Anyone can use it. If you're stuck, please use the hashtag. It's a way for us to help each other get to the next level. So it's a good thing, and please be a part of it. If you post a question or if you answer a question, we're open arms.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So this session that I'm delivering today is SharePoint Power Platform 101 tips and tricks. We're going to talk about SharePoint, Power Apps, and Power Automate. I still call it Flow, although there are flows within Power Automate, but I still use that terminology. I think someone's going to tell me I need to stop, but I'm going to keep going until they say that. This is definitely a interactive session. So if you have any questions or anything that piques your interest, please feel free to ask, and I will jump in and we will answer those questions. All right. So the takeaway today is really just, I made mistakes when I first started, and I want to share some of those things that I've done, so that you don't have the same issues, as well as kind of think through some of the more challenging things that you're going to face with the platform from a consulting standpoint as well. Because, for instance, a lot of the SharePoint environments you want to go into, those environments are already stood up. They're already established. And so there's some things you need to work around to make your apps or make your flows just that much better, or you make so they even work. All right. So let's start here. And so I already got my tips up there, but I'm going to actually walk through the environment for SharePoint. My very first tip for anyone is know your environment. And that's kind of hard to say, but when you jump into a SharePoint environment, understand your lists, your libraries, understand why they're built and how they're being used. A lot of people just kind of use SharePoint as just as a file for file storage. And there's so much more to SharePoint than just using a file storage. So, kind of know about those things. So let me just switch over to my environment. And if you haven't seen SharePoint before, this is SharePoint. This is SharePoint Online. A lot of things we're going to talk about today, it could be interchangeable between online or on-prem. But for me right now, online is kind of where I live. On-prem, it has its reasons and purpose to have them, but I prefer the cloud. So I'm not gonna bash, but yes, I prefer the cloud. So if you've never seen a page before, this is a SharePoint page here. On it's called our navigation. If you have documents, which is a shared location. But here I'm just going to create a quick list and explain to you some of the things about lists. Now, before check that
out. That's new.
Oh, right here.
Yep.
Yeah. Also beware that things in your environment may change and you not know that they changed. So I did not see this one. I only see this in Teams. I haven't seen this in my environment. So it still works the same. These are templates that they provide to you, or if you want to go ahead and just create your own from a blank list. So in this case, I'll do that, and I'm gonna give it a name. Now, a part of my tips and tricks, I should have, before I even got into this, I should have brought my pencil out. Pencils before keys is what I say, and it's all about really understanding why are you building a list? Why are you building a list? What that list is going to, what are you going to do with that? What type of columns do you need? If you don't understand what columns are, for me, a list is like an Excel document, right? So in an Excel document, you have rows and you have columns. You also have different data attributes that you use. So you have yes, no, or Booleans. You have people, you have pickers and drop downs and all that kind of good stuff. It's the exact same, well, not the exact same thing. It's very comparable inside of SharePoint, a SharePoint list or a SharePoint library. So before we start to build these things, let's identify that first. Once you identify that, now it's time to go in and start to build your SharePoint list. Now, a part of my other tip is do not use special characters, and whenever, do not use spaces. I don't know if anyone watched the movie or there's some memes say no more wire hangers. That's how I feel about spaces. No more spaces. When you build things, you shouldn't use spaces, and I'm going to show you why. So in my case here, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a name. I'm going to call it Anton Demo. So this right now I'm building the list. Another tip is when you have descriptions, if there's a little box for you to fill things in, please take the time to fill those boxes in, right? Because when you come into a new environment, you want to have an idea of what that list is used for. So if you don't have an idea what that list is used for, it's going to cost more time for you to research and look for certain things. So be fair to someone else and give a description. If not, you'll spend the time, or they'll spend the time. I know someone's with the lottery and they want to get a new job soon, or go travel, and whoever comes behind you will be lost. And we've all experienced that in the past of coming into an environment and being lost. So I'm just call this the Milltown Connect. Anybody come behind it, they know what it's about. They'll understand. So this here is for navigation. So if you want to show our list in the navigation here, it'll pop up there. So I'm going to say yes, leave it there for now and create. Now, the reason I say no spaces, let me show you this. Look at this. This is the URL. So this is my tenant. And in SharePoint, we call this the web app. So this is my web app. This is a site, and this is the site name. This is a list, and here's my name, Anton. I put a space in there, and now it gives us this %20, and then demo. So SharePoint will substitute that. It must have characters. There's no spaces allowed. So it has to fill in with something. So it fills it in with this %20. Now, it looks okay here, right? But when it comes down to you creating some flows or creating your app, you may end up having issues because of this little %20. And I'll show you some other things about %20 as well. So just make sure when you create anything new, always do it without spaces. You can use the camel. So camel query or camel syntax is low characters and then capital characters. So characters. So it's like a bit like a camel's back, right? So that's one thing that we use. We call it is the camel. So I would suggest using that. Now let me create a new column and show you why I'll say show you the trick. The trick is when you create a column. So in order to create columns, let me step back. I kind of just ran through that. There's two ways to create columns. The way that I use is using the gear. I'm all about gear. So whenever you see a gear in SharePoint or anywhere inside of Microsoft in the Power Platform, there's some information underneath that icon. So do not be afraid to click to see what it does. It's going to be a way for you to learn what's going on or have more options. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead. I'm inside of my SharePoint settings, and I'm going to go to list settings. And list settings. Oh, yep.
Is there a reason why you wouldn't just create the column up front on the front list?
So I don't like creating columns up front because you get these little funky GUIDs, these little crazy under. So this is a GUID. You get those, and I just don't like the way that it renders. I like to go back in and just create them from from the column itself.
I noticed that too, and I think that's kind of like the old school way of doing it, is going back here and creating it. I mean, that's the way that we've always been used to it.
Yep.
And that's how, you can kind of tell that you've been in SharePoint for some time because of that. Knowing that you can go to site contents, go to the list settings or library settings, and then be able to modify that and add there. Certainly on the front end, like you said, with like the GUID, yeah, it's kind of odd how it does that, and I don't necessarily follow why they do that.
Nor do I.
Okay.
It's been an argument about that though.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's something that's really weird, and that, like you're saying, if you're trying to punch it into a flow or a Power App, it becomes cumbersome to be able to punch in the random digits that they give you as a URL for that column.
Yeah. And things that, and what I want to show here is the fact that there's something called, there's an internal name and there's a display name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you create your column for the first time, you're creating the internal name. So if I click on create column and it comes up. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we kind of talking about, Excel and the different data types inside of Excel. So we have about the same thing here inside of a SharePoint list. So in this case here, I'm going to call this one Anton name, right? And then actually, no, I'm going to do it the correct way. So the way it should look should be something like this. It can be that way, or it can be this way. The one thing about this is just having a naming convention, or have a convention for when you're creating these new columns. Again, it's going to help you out on the back end later. So right now I'm using my little camel here. So small and big, and I am going to move Anthony out the way like that. And then I'm going to, before I click OK, so there's different things here. So again, there's a description, and I can build apps, but I can't type to save my life. But I use more than just 2 fingers. So I give my description here. Now, if you want this column to be required, meaning that no one can fill anything out, or you can't submit this record without having it required, you go ahead and put, select yes. Or if not, you just leave it as no. So in my case, I'm just leave it as no. So I'm gonna say OK. So my little ring of hope here is doing its thing. All right, so let's go back to the URL and let's take a look at it. So it has a field name. So your column is called a field, and it looks this way. So that looks good, right? Because there's no spaces, no %20s. So I'm gonna say OK, and then I'm gonna create another one. I'm gonna make it a little wonky. So Anton address, right? And we can use. I'm gonna leave it as just a single line of text. And I'm gonna not go fill it in for now, just because we're doing demo. All right, so it's finished. And let's take a look. See, this is rancid. As if I was Gordon, I would say it was rancid, because there's these little X's here, right? So in this case right now, if you use a %20, underscore X0020 is the equivalent of a %sign. So now when you go into to your SharePoint or into your Power App, or if you go into your your flow, it's going to have these little %20s, and it's just it makes it hard. And then when you decide to go into more custom dev, right? You gotta build things for internal names. You got to deal with this %20 thing, or these underscores, which is it's just not a good thing to use. So first tip or trick is just go in and change it. So now if you want to have it that way, if you go in here and just change it, right? Or actually, let me go back to the other one. I'm gonna show you what you should do. The trick is, now that this is ready, we got a good name, go in and change it.
And why would you do that? How come we would change it, or why would we keep one or the other?
Yeah. So the reason that you want to change it is because if you go to your I'll show you. So you go to your SharePoint list, it's going to show this name. So it's going to show this name, and we don't want to see it like this. This is not eye pleasing. People that your users like, what the hell is this? Why is this name not right? Or when you pull your requirements, it has to be a certain name. This way you get around it by giving the user what they're asking for, as well as making sure that you keep the fidelity or quality of your application or your list.
That makes sense.
So no, in this case, so I'm gonna just change this one here and remove the space, and then you tell me which one you think looks better when you look at it. I put 2 spaces in there. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at it.
So if you ever wanted to see the internal name too, if we could look at that. I mean, when you're trying to find, so you're creating this list that you're eventually gonna, do some automation on Power Apps or Power Automate Flow type of deal. How do we know what we're working with and what we should be using as well?
As far as like which internal or external list liking?
Right.
So actually, I'm gonna show you that. That's a great segue. So let's take a look at this. So as of right now, this is just a SharePoint list, and we're going to use the classic SharePoint blade. So if I click new here, this is just a classic SharePoint blade, right? But if you want to go ahead and edit the form, which I want to do here, and I am no longer Alex today. And so as we wait for it to build the edit form, we'll see what it looks like. The good thing about this is the fact that when you decide to use SharePoint, and if you decide to use a list, use Power Apps, you could actually, I should open the other way. I want to show you guys how to if you decide that your app doesn't look good or your screen doesn't look good, how to go back in and change that. I'm trying to make sure I got time. Oh Lord, I need to move. Anyway, so these are basically just data cards that we have. As you bring those data cards in, sometimes they have these. They have how can I say it? A friendly name, and then they have like a name that's internal, so that you need to look at. So in this case here, if we want to make an update, and there we go, update. There we go. Sorry. So there's the internal and the external name. I can show you better inside of Flow, because they actually like lay it out for you, and it shows the internal name, and sometimes you get mixed up on which one you need to use. So I'm not gonna.
I don't think it's very clearly laid out either. I mean, sometimes I feel like they're changing it on me, and it's different in this environment versus that environment. That's not the case, but I feel like it always seems to escape whenever I'm using one. It's like, oh, I got to use the other, and it's kind of funny that way.
And the thing about that is you have to think about too is the fact of and they're working to change this, but the thought process that you have when you build a Power App is a different thought process that you have when you build a Flow, right? So for instance, inside of Power Automate, you have a unique and distinct. So if you want to have like just one certain type of thing come back, you want the one of a kind. If you use distinct inside of Power Apps, it does the exact same thing that what unique does in Flow. But if you go to Flow and say distinct, it's going to give you an issue. If you come to Power Apps and say unique, it's going to give you an issue. So they do the same thing, it's just 2 different names, which I don't understand that part yet. But they are working to bring everything back together again. So
right.
So yeah. So actually, no. While I'm here, let's talk. Let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and cycle through, and let's talk about Power Apps. So my first tip is, again, sketch your app out before you get in here. It's going to save you so much time in your build. If you if you don't want to use a pencil, I'm a pencil and paper still type of person. If you decide to use anything else, you could use PowerPoint if you want to. PowerPoint is pretty simple. Be able to just draw some boxes. It's very wireframe-ish, right? The one thing that you're going to learn as you journey through the Power Platform, a lot of the dev type activities that happen outside of you are going to do the exact same thing. So you are literally a citizen developer, because you don't do it inside of because you don't do .NET or C#, you still developing. So so take some of those principles and kind of start to do that. Definitely craft or write your app out first. And then the second one here is just get acquainted with the Power Apps studio and the controls, right? So in this case right here, this is the studio. And a Power App itself, in very general terms, it really has three parts, right? Part one is a control. You have to have a control to even start it, because a control, which if you click here to say insert, these are controls, right? So to have a screen, it's a control. Without a screen, you can't do anything, right? So you have to have that. You also must have a function or a formula, or as we would call it, code, to make things work, right? So you have to have that. And then the last one, you have to have some type of data source. Your data source either could be SharePoint, like I'm talking about today. It could be data source. It could be SharePoint, or if you have all these different connectors, you can use these different connectors to create your application. The part I love about Power Apps is the fact of you can just mash almost anything together and have an app. And a lot of these things, some of these are free, so I'm going to pay for. But for the most part, if you're working with just Office 365, you'll be pretty good. So, so I say definitely get used to that. And the one thing that they do for us, and I do this with every app that I build, and I'm so glad they brought this out, was if you look here on this toolbar here, it says Advanced Tools, and they have this little thing here called the monitor, right? This is one of my favorite things that they have available. It's a monitor. Now, what the monitor does is, as you build your app, if things are right or things are wrong, the monitor is going to pick it up, and it's going to tell you, like, it's going to give you these details to what happened. If it worked well, it's going to show that it worked well. If it was wrong, it's going to tell you that it's wrong. So let me kind of show you how this works. So in this case right now, I just have I have my form, and in the edit view, if I click this little play button, it puts it in preview. And let's go back and change this so that it is new. So these are other parts of getting used to the environment, right? So
yeah, how come it didn't show when you first clicked the play button?
It didn't show because when I first clicked the play button, the default mode was in edit. So basically what it was saying is that if you want to work on this file, you want to edit the file, it has to see something or have a connection to a row inside of SharePoint, or inside your list. So in this case, if I look at my item, right, it's not really bringing anything in here yet. So if I want to see it, I have to go to new, and then if I hit play, now it's going to work, because this is a new. It's not looking for any data. We just know that this is something new and you need to add it in. That make sense?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So in here, I'm going to say Anton again, and then if we go here, you can see that it's like looking at my keystrokes, is watching what's happening.
Wow.
And so this is really good because you can see what's happening on the back end. If something goes awry, it'll have a nice little button here. It'll tell you that it failed. And then we click here and then click properties. This is giving you like the low down nitty gritty of what's going on, what's actually happening inside the app itself.
So is this something that's free, or do you have to pay for this?
No, this is free. This is something that on every app, or anytime you go into I'm going to Power Apps, it's always right here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I haven't used tests yet. It's experimental, so I'm trying to step back from it. But this monitor thing is amazing. So when you start doing things that are more complex, so for instance, I was working on sending email from the app, from my app. I may have put the wrong email address in, or email address was kind of off, it will flag it and tell me that it didn't send it through because of these issues. So this is a great tool to use. If you're not using it, I would consider definitely taking a look at it. Even if you're building something simple, it's still good to see it, to really understand what's going on. And if you don't know, or heard of JSON, SharePoint, I'm sorry, Power Apps and Power Automate are heavy on JSON. So, if you want to brush up on some skills to get, to really understand what it's doing or telling you what's going on right now, look into JSON. So let's go back here and let's see what was our tip for, yes. One thing we need to do, which is important, is naming conventions. So in this case here, we have our different controls. It's good to go in and put in your own name, because if not, you'll just have controls, say data card value XYZ, and if you kind of look into them more, they're very generic, right? So if you need to do any type of solutioning that requires you to use another control, you can identify that control without trying to type through data card value ABC and not find the right one. So always do that. And also try to comment out your content. So as we're inside of our functions here, so if we go in, and again, this is things that developers do. If you put 2 forward slashes in here, that's considered as commenting out your code. So you can use this in one of two ways. One is if you're trying to do some testing, you can comment out that you can comment out what you have available, and then above it or beneath it, add in some different code to test. Or if you want to, you can go ahead and comment out and just give a comment to what's going on. So in this case, I'm just going to do do this, and what I just did on my keyboard was shift enter to get it to move. And now if I go back up top, I can go ahead and comment and say this is a test. And when you look at the code, it's letting someone know why you did it, and then it's still going to run. So when I come back behind you, or someone looks at your code, or unfortunately, if you look at your own code after you've learned so much, you're like, why did I do this? This comment will be there to help you out. So
yeah, that's certainly important, especially like you were saying with the components. If you rename them, you're able to use those names. It's almost like using a form of a comment with the components.
Yeah.
Where you're able to name those with respective names versus just the out of the box kind of the nomenclature that Power Apps uses. And I mean, you go into one app, you're gonna have a data card one. You go into another app, you're gonna have a data card one as well. So it can get kind of confusing if you're building more than one at a time, or if you're not full time on it, or whatever the case is. Yeah, it certainly can. It seems like it can help here.
Yeah, I still go look at apps. My first app, I look like, why did I even do this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then the comment code was there to help me out. Now, I didn't touch on this, but a trick. Now, with SharePoint, sometimes you get these really big data sets. Power Apps always respects the data source. So if your SharePoint data source has a limitation, it's going to respect that. If it has permissions, it's going to respect that. The one thing that it does not respect, which is so disrespectful, is the fact of there's a term called delegation, and delegation basically is the way that that Power App uses its own. It does all its own calculations in the cloud, and it will continue to calculate until it's finished. But in SharePoint, if you have over a certain number of records, it will calculate, but it will appear to be stalled, right? And so we don't have that bad experience. The Power Apps team created this delegation, and the delegation is set at 500 records, or you can increase to 2,000 records. So what that means is that when you pull data back into your Power App, it's going to pull that top number. So if you have 600 records inside of your list, it's going to pull the first 500. The other 100 will just sit there and you'll never see them again inside your app. But if you increase it to 2,000, you'll see the first 2,000. But if you have a 3,000 record, if you have 3,000 records in there, you're going to lose those other 1,000 records. So there's a way to work around that inside of Flow, and I'm going to kind of just segue over to that and show you. All right, I got my Flow built up here. If you want to build a flow, you also can do it this way. Let me show you here. I'm gonna close over here and go to actions, and then right here, Power Automate. Move up here.
Is there any benefits to creating it, through, let's say, the app, or if you were to go through the product page?
So if you're going to bring in an app of a flow you already created, this is how you would do it by clicking this icon here. You can see them. You would just kind of click on it, and it'll bring them into the flow. Into your Power app. But if you want to, you can click here and say create new flow, and it does the same thing. It's the only thing it does, it gives you this button here to figure out what you want to do. But if you decide to use it again, you just kind of click here, and it will go ahead and just kind of set things up for you. And that's if you know that you want to do it this way. If you don't know what you want to do, then you want a super custom, then you will go in here and say my flows, and then new, and then from there you would select the flows you want to use. So if you want to say automated, you can do it that way, and then it'll give you the ability to pick your triggers. So,
and a trigger just being,
or it's ask. It was ask flow. I forgot which one because it's not in this demo. But so your trigger. So a part of a flows really only have at the bare essence has two things that you need to have a flow. One is a trigger, and the trigger is what kicks off your flow. What activity or what action takes place to make this flow wake up and do its job. And then the second one it has is actions, and actions are basically the inner workings of your flow. So in any one that you would build, it would do the same thing. In this case, I'm just going to build a quick flow for Power Automate, and then kind of show you what to do. All right, so in this case here, if I go with instant flow, it gives me this ability to just go ahead and just create my trigger from Power Apps. You can go this way. I'll definitely give it a real name. For me, the way that I name my flows is I give a name of the list that I'm coming from and the environment that I'm building it in, and then its name. That way, it's a quick way for me to kind of look at it and easy to sort. So move on. So I'm just going to say create now.
As you're working through that, we did have a couple questions come through. Okay. One question being, SharePoint lists come with different default columns. Title is a column that I've seen repurposed or renamed.
Yes.
Or set as an optional and ignored. What is the best practices with this column?
So the great thing about the title column is the fact the title column usually has a link that you can click into and see information. It really depends on your use of the column. So like I said, people are repurposing it because the word title doesn't make sense to them. So you can go back in and just rename it to something else, and then still use it inside of the flow. I haven't deleted I haven't tried to delete the title. It's just always been something that I've always kept inside of my flows. Inside of my SharePoint list. So there really isn't, I hate to say it's not a best practice, but the best practice is don't delete it, one. And two, if you need to repurpose it, go ahead and repurpose it and just change the name. But remember, when you decide to build if you decide to build a Power App or build a flow, that name that you called it is no longer you can't find it inside of your Power App or your flow. It's going to be underneath the name of title.
Awesome. That was a really good description there, Jim. Hopefully you were able to catch that. And then there's another one here from Saul where he has a question. Does the new form edited with Power Apps, so the one that you just created, let's say, work on bulk edit in SharePoint, or can you only edit a single item at a time?
So you can only edit a single item at a time with the Power App. or the form. But if you decided you wanted to do more than one, let's see, where is the return back then? Don't publish. If you choose not to, you have the ability to use the edit and grid view. And basically, if you use SharePoint in the past, this is the grid view that we're used to, just going in and adding content. Let me say VA. So this still works the way that it used to, but if you have, not the words not, but it also will allow you to run flows as well if you have any flows attached to it. You can still go ahead and run things once you go ahead and say, you know, exit the view as it's thinking. It'll wake up and run that flow. If there's a flow attached to it on create or create or modify as a trigger.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you again for those questions, Jim and Saul. Hopefully we answered those. Write in if you guys have anything else that you'd like to add to that, or if there's clarification needed.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I think I've got kind of deep into the time, but I'm gonna keep moving, right?
Yeah, we have 10 minutes left.
All right. Okay, here we go. So, well, actually, I'll just go here and just kind of talk through this here. So, first thing again is use pencils before you decide to build your flow, because you can go ahead and create the different options or the different data sets. You can do that and just identify how you want it to work. Opposed to going in and just arbitrarily just start building things. It's not the best thing to do. Number two is to the ellipses is your friend. As you see right here, ellipses are everywhere. They're amazing. And one thing that I like about these ellipses that I had to learn early was peak code. And peak code is basically, again, under the hood, letting you know what's going on with that action itself or that trigger. You can't change it, but if you're nosy or inquisitive is the word to use, you can go ahead and use it from that standpoint as well. So in this case here, I'm just going to take a SharePoint connector, and let's just use. Oh, this is my favorite. This is a new one. If anyone's building an app and you're using do until or do while, get changes for an item is the newest thing that you should use. Actually, in this case, I'm just going to use this as a connector. So here you identify your list that you're going to build from. I'm not sure where I set that one up last time, but I'm just going to say here. If you have any lists, the ID. In this case, the ID is going to ask Power Apps for the ID, so we'll add that. The sense is really cool too because it wants to know like what time do I start to look at, right? So look at that, and then you can leave this optional. So if I click the ellipses and go to peak code, all the things that I just built in there, it's going to show you what it looks like under the hood in JSON. So if you, it's just a way to kind of get used to seeing things different, or if you're studying or want to learn how to use JSON, this is an idea of how Microsoft uses it inside of Power Apps. I'm sorry, inside of Flow. All right. The number 3 is to create naming conventions. Again, create a naming convention. Always change your rename the actions. So we go here and hit rename, and then we can call it whatever. Let's see, change for list SPS.
Again, this is kind of like those comments, it seems like, like we were able to kind of put in your own, customized information there so that you can go back to it and understand kind of what that does personally for you versus maybe the out of the box title.
Most definitely, because if you do it more than one time, it's always going to say, condition 1, condition 2. So good to change.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Doesn't help at all. And then comments do the same thing. If you want to comment, this is looking for a change. You can do that as well. So that way, when we, it's very visual. Like when you look at it, you know what it's doing. You're not going in and say, okay, well, I don't understand why we're doing this or how it's working. Those are the things that you look for. And And then the other cool one that I definitely say that you should look into is the copy action. So usually when you build apps, build flows, sometimes your flows are just monstrous. And they have some use for duplicating some different actions. So if you want to, you can go to the ellipsis here and click on copy to my clipboard. And so basically what it's doing is it's taking a copy of this and is allowing you to paste it back in. So if I go to new step and go to my clipboard, it's already there. And so just to go back to what Anthony was saying, like if we don't change the names, you'll see a number 2 behind it. Clipboard is pretty cool, but it has some limitations depending on what you're trying to pull. I think that it gives an issue with variables. If you need to build any variables, it has that issue. And the last one that I'm not gonna go into the tricks on this one, but the last one, and this is super important, I think, is to learn or at least understand REST API. And the reason I say that is because if you are used to SharePoint Designer workflows, there's so many things that SharePoint Designer did out of the box, super easy for you. But when you come to Power Automate, some of those things aren't so just in your face. You kind of have to work for some time now because Flow is a double-edged sword because it gives you a lot of options, but then you have to learn. You have to do things a bit different. So I definitely say you should learn that. And the one thing that I'm going to put later on is this little download here. And basically what this download is, it gives you, I'm gonna go ahead and just DL it and I'll open to show you guys, but with the REST API, and if we can get into it a little bit deeper, if you guys have any questions about it, but it basically gives you the ability to kind of go directly into the SharePoint list and do things that Flow right now may not do. So one of the bigger things is pulling back large amounts of data. So we talked about that earlier. Like if you're in an environment and that data set is over over a number, hundreds, 200s, or sorry, 2000s, you're going to need to find a way to pull this data back. Or even if you have a SharePoint list that has multiple complex fields. Complex fields are like people picker, dates, those type of fields. If you have more than, I think it's 8 or 10 in one list, if you go to use some of these connectors, it will not run. It will tell you that there's an issue with the list, and then you have to go figure out what it is. Or I think that was before. Now it gives you a little more succinct issue. To go in and look for it. So either you have to build a new view and pull data based off the view, or you have to use REST API or use the send an HTTP request to SharePoint option to get that data back. That's one. And then also the one that I just learned this today, so I had to share this one. If you guys are sending email, right? So if you send it using the email connector, the email connector will just say, send email to someone, and it will send it based off of the person's name. But if you want to send it on SharePoint's behalf, you have to use REST API to do that. And I learned that from a friend this morning, Daniel Christian. He put a quick video out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm working through that right now.
That's
so
awesome.
That is awesome, yo. So that's a quick thing that you can do to get your data back. But you have to do it through do it through REST API. And if you don't do it that way, it will always be sent on the behalf of whoever or the person that credentials are used to use that action.
So as we wrap up, we have about 2 more minutes left. Anything else? Any closing comments?
Yeah, right. So
many good information that was shared here.
I know, right? So this is usually, I used to do this as an hour or 2 hour talk on just SharePoint by itself. So yeah, big thing is before starting, man, use pencils before keys. Write those things out. Create a naming convention. Comment out your actions or your code. SharePoint, please, no spaces. And in Power Apps, definitely understand your controls. And in Flow, please take the time to take a look at REST API and OData. Not saying that you have to use this all the time, but I guarantee you that OData is will come to the rescue to help you in your flow. So that's at 2 o'clock.
Awesome. That was perfect timing.